Welcome to Thai Talk Time. Not because I'm going to speak Thai, but because it's the only opportunity I get to speak to other human beings in English, and as I don't speak Thai, there is no other conversation in my day with human beings anyway. Geckos, dogs, all manner of creatures, and that's the beauty. I am a person of a tendency to speak a lot, so the third aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path, if you remember, after right view, right intention, and up there, so very important in the top three, is right speech. The Buddha said you have to remember you have an axe in your mouth, and you wouldn't throw an axe at anyone willy-nilly. Like, you should be very careful with what you say. It's very easy to let something slip out and regret it very quickly, and say to yourself very quickly and mindfully, oh, why did I say that? But why doesn't that mindfulness come in prior to saying it? It's just practice. And the best way to practice is to have a barrier between speaking, like guarding our sense doors from all kinds of sensual attractions which could fuel desires, until you're ready to face them. When you've built up that equanimity in your practice, then it's good to protect yourself, not suppress, protect, shield. This is why we close our eyes in meditation. It just helps with the focusing of our awareness on the meditation object. So, for someone who speaks a lot, often a reason you speak a lot is not because of overconfidence. The opposite is because of, let's say, a lack of confidence or anxiety or nervousness. Maybe it's why a lot of show-busy kind of celebrity people, whom appear on the face of it very happy and joyous and successful and in the public eye, behind the scenes are very sad, lonely, depressed. You hear of many early tragic deaths in the celebrity world through drug abuse and all kinds of horrible stories. I'm not saying it's a particular industry, because I mean you could pick the same number of fatalities out of people who worked in banks, I should think. But it does become a little apparent that people who are on the stage and used to performing in their real life without the mask, without that persona. We call ourselves a person. It comes from the word persona, which I think, if I heard an Ajahn rightly explain it once, comes from some Greek or something like that language meaning mask. So our persona, our personality view, Sakkaya Ditthi, is like a mask. And speech is part of that outwardly pouring leakage of our defilements and our weaknesses. If you don't like the defilements, you could just use the word weaknessness. The word in Pali is kilesas, which are our underlying evidence of greed, hatred and delusion. And where do these problems manifest themselves? Firstly, it is in speech, and it is the hardest to control. So I'm appreciating, and this is why we have solitary retreats, this is why we have silent retreats where nobody speaks to each other. You even have retreats where people walk around saying, I'm not speaking. They've gone on a sign around their neck. They've gone on a no speaking at all thing. Now it's a little bit, taking it a bit too far. But the beauty of the language barrier is you still have to communicate. You have duties, you have things to do, people to see, places to go. Not so much here, but there are things that need to be communicated. And this can be done without unnecessary packing. We have something to say, it's like you receive a parcel from Amazon. We tend to, rather than just give the person the thing that or get the thing from Amazon, just like that. It comes with all manner of packaging around it. Foam, worms, and then plastic bags, and then more cardboard, and then, when we say something to someone, we often wrap it all up with this extra baggage, rather than getting to the point. An English expression is beat around the bush. When there's a language barrier, it's very good. You can't do that. You have to just say, are you okay? Yes or no. Where is the water? Yes or no. It's very boom, 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 simple, without being rude, without seeming uncaring, without seeming impolite. So it's a useful opportunity to reflect and understand where you go wrong in the right speech aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path, where you can sometimes get it wrong and sometimes get it so very wrong. It's often in the packaging that surrounds what you're trying to say, or just as simple as something like the tone in which you said it. So I'm benefiting and enjoying and learning from now 2 weeks of having no one to actually have a conversation with, other than these little talking moments. So thank you for giving me that opportunity, because without these comments and questions, I'd just literally be talking to myself, which I can do without without the phone in front of me. So yeah, that's my little bit of diary, I suppose, spot for the day. I did hear an Ajahn at Abhayagiri just speaking on this very subject of, he also has the problem of being an over-talker, someone who talks too much. And he was talking about a fellow monk or samanera back in time whom didn't speak at all. And he was bestowing the virtues of that, and how he would have liked to have swapped minds to be in that position, not to have to speak all of the time. And yes, I very much agree with him that given this opportunity to not have to speak, and have a really good reason not to, it is a pleasure once you get used to it, and hopefully will continue, like with meditation, sitting in a, let's say, a slightly artificial environment. You're sitting in a usual comfortable on the floor or on your cushion in a place that's where you're not going to be interrupted, where there's not too much going on, with your eyes closed, sitting still. This is creating a situation whereby you can practice samadhi, practice focusing your mind, bringing your attention to one-pointedness. Now the objective of that is to continue that through your everyday life with mindfulness, being able to focus, have your mind single-pointed on the job in hand, what you're doing. So mindfulness, practicing mindfully and being aware, awake of everything you're doing. So similarly, we start off in these closeted environments with whatever part of the training of that Noble Eightfold Path we're trying to achieve, in that case samadhi, in this case right speech. You start off, like with riding a bicycle, with stabilizers, trainer wheels, whatever you'd like to call them. And then once you're ready, you can take them off. So I'm going back to basics coming here. I'm coming back to where I started. I'm coming back to the strict rules of the Thai Forest tradition, where there's no flexibility, where I'm having to be very mindful about everything I do, be very careful, if you like, and just call it that word, and watch my speech. But whilst I'm not having to be so careful about speaking, because I can't, I'm able to really watch my mind, what that's doing, because my mind is speaking even if my mouth isn't. And it's there we need to catch these things that we say that aren't quite appropriate for the moment, in the mind, before they come out of the mouth. And this is the training. So if you get the opportunity, you could just say to your friends, your family at home on a Sunday, so from when I wake up on Sunday until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I will not speak. There was a famous actor once, talking of celebrities, he's now dead, called Larry Haggerman. And for many years, he did not speak. He played the character J.R. Ewing in a program called Dallas. That was back in the days when I enjoyed TV very much, and that was one of my favourite programs. And for many years, for most of his working life, for most of his adult life, he did not speak on Sundays at all. And this was his practice. He just did not speak. Now, he was a very outwardly going, famous man, celebrity, actor. And this is what he did. And I never quite understood that at the time, hearing that story in his little biography, sometime I think after he died. And now I do. It is a good practice, it's helpful. What you're doing is you're bringing your awareness to the mind speaking rather than the mouth. And once you can get your mindfulness, your awareness, to the mind speaking, it's easier to preempt and stop what's going to come out of the mouth. Yes, that's not what I was going to talk about. I have some questions. Someone emailed saying, please can I'm not going to say who, because it's an email. If you email, I won't say your name. If it's a comment which is on public view, I'll say your name. So an email from someone, unless you specifically say, you can use my name. And sometimes it's more easy to send an email, because I don't know about you, typing in that little comments box is quite tricky. If you get so far and you've done something, I don't know, it can disappear if you go somewhere else, you know. Anyway, besides the point. Asked if he can correspond with me with regards to this training, this practice. And I replied very quickly, yes, of course you can. And although I can't promise to answer all questions always as quickly as I've been trying to do, because sometimes there are more than other times, if they're appropriate, most things are appropriate to the Dharma and appropriate to ask a Buddhist monk. There's very little you can't ask, or I would very happily read the question and answer that I wouldn't comment on that. If it was, say, who's going to win the World Cup in football, I might not even reply. Or how's the weather in that part of Thailand, I might not even reply. But if it's something relevant or closely relevant, like I'm thinking of going to Thailand to visit some monasteries, how long am I allowed to stay there in the country? Okay, that's a kind of a visa-related question, but you're linking it to something to do very much with wholesome activities, staying in a monastery when you come to Thailand, something like that. Does that make sense? So this is the email. I said, please do comment. Please do send me your inquiries, questions. And with regards to these comments, these questions coming up, I'm going to talk about them now. Just from my point of view, not as an expert. Like I've said before, it's just me sharing my experience of monastic life, of this practice, and of course, the long and many years leading up to that, of my experience as a now approaching, if not already, old man. Grumpy old man. What's this, a comment, so I can say then, Gabrielle, can you please do a question and answer video on retreats with yogi monks and what you know about them? Oh, I don't know anything about yogi monks. Now, yogi really means teacher. So if you mean specifically, I'm thinking maybe you're meaning the Indian concept of a sadhu looking, lots of, what are these dreadlock things, and orange clothes, and in a cave, in a trance, practicing austere practices, or covered in ash, or one of these sort of people, then I have no experience firsthand. I know a few of them from being a monk myself that I've associated with and lived for a few days at a time on different mountains and caves and places in India, but we had very little common in our practice. So they weren't my teachers, we were just surviving together. So I had a very good friend who was one of these sadhus, there's a couple of them in fact, who I've bumped into at different places, and then a few years later again in other places, because they're likewise travelling monks. but we share our knowledge of the area, places to sleep safely and survival, but in terms of their beliefs and that part of the training, it's quite a different thing. But if you're referring to retreats for staying with monastics in this tradition, in the Theravada Buddhist tradition, well, you can really just use good old Google to find out about where is available to your locality, because I'm not sure exactly where you're from or where you're living or where you're planning to go. There are many things around the world, from meditation retreats to other religions, even monasteries where you can stay. It doesn't do you any harm necessarily if you're just looking to live in a monastic environment. If you don't have a Buddhist monastery to hand, often there are some Christian monasteries, for instance, that have guests, and you get the opportunity to live with monks, albeit of a different religion. In principle, the kind of lifestyle is quite similar, along the same lines, and it is a good training. But if you can find a Buddhist monastery, which there are many, and Google this if you need any help, tell me your specific ideas of where you want to go, let me know. But this is the first place to start. And I can't even suggest a country because I don't know where you're from, Gabrielle. I think you may have told me before, so apologies if I've forgotten. But specifically yogi monks, if they're what I think you're thinking they are, I don't know any of them or have any experience. Or what do I think? I don't, can't tell you much about them. And the next question from yes, sorry, I was just checking that I could read the question out all in full. I've edited the bits out that I thought I wouldn't air. From you, Blue, questioner, it's called Blue. While listening to your speech and watching you sitting on the balcony of your simple wooden temple, a question burst into my mind. Burst. We need to calm that one down a little, bursting in your mind. Thinking's bad enough, but explosions, oh heavens. We need to do more meditating, Blue. Do you frequently miss your more comfortable and quite luxurious life in the UK or not? Not. No, I don't. And then in brackets, I am one of the like-minded persons like you, and my now estranged relatives label me as a silly one. You know, in this practice you will find that many of your friends, if not all of them, will drop away. You're changing your lifestyle. If your previous lifestyle was of lavish existence, spending money, going to restaurants, cinemas, pubs, the people you associated with doing that are not going to be interested in being alone, living in silence, meditating, eating once a day, wearing robes, shaving your head. So expect them to disappear. But even in a case of not doing that, not renouncing, not changing your life, if you really examine your friends, they're mainly associates, people you do things, you like them, you all get on together with. Very few of us can count the number of true, real friends we have on one hand. In fact, if you've got 5 really true, real friends that you've had most of your life, or even for a short while, but are really close friends, firstly, they wouldn't mind what you chose to do. They'd still be your friend. But secondly, we don't have that many. I've had many associates and friends. I still have those associates and friends. Some are still around, some have died. I hardly ever speak to them. I have one very good friend I speak to regularly who I've known since college or college after school, so that's my longest term friendship. We speak on a very regular basis. We lead completely opposite kinds of lifestyles. He runs around in speedboats in the Med, in a gin palace, kind of one of these great big yachts they call them, but it's a big speedboat thing like this, and drives a Bentley convertible, and when he's in England, and lots of that, seriously rich kind of superstar lifestyle with lots of women and champagne. And he sends me his photographs of him on his yacht in Portugal, in his house in Portugal, sipping champagne and all of this. That's his lifestyle. And we were very close as we went through college together. We used to get the train together each day and evening back, and we didn't live too far apart. We weren't best buddies, but we've been together in terms of we've grown up together like that, from teenagers to 50-year-olds. And at some point we went in different directions. I went this way, he went that way, or we were both going the same way, and we both exaggerated aspects of those directions. He went towards money and luxury, I went towards renunciation and monasticism. But we're still in touch. So he's my one proper good friend, and there's a couple of others. There were a few more, some have died. But you'll find if you change your lifestyle, people, even family, will have less to do with you. But it doesn't mean they've fallen out with you, you haven't offended them. You've got less common interests. You can still keep in touch. How are you? Just send them a Christmas card, a birthday card. I make a serious point of remembering birthdays and Christmas messages with all my family and contacts, because I want to. I want to know how they are, genuinely. I want them to know I'm okay. And you can't expect them always to remember you, because you've disappeared to the other side of the world, or you're living in a cave somewhere. So you keep them in mind all of the time, because your mind is less cluttered, and you make a little discipline just to remember them in that way. So don't worry about that too much, Blue. As far as actually missing luxurious life in the UK or not, well, I could do what my friend is doing if I'd chosen that way. And I suppose if I really wanted to, then yeah, I could stop all this and go and do that. And I certainly don't miss that, want that, have any inclination or desire for that in any shape nor form whatsoever. In fact, it doesn't horrify me, the idea. It just makes me laugh, because it is so to me, from this perspective, it is so futile, such a waste of time. It's just chasing the dream all of the time, chasing, and never being able to satisfy that insatiable lust and desire for the next best speedboat, the next most expensive bottle of champagne, the next youngest, prettiest woman. Sorry about the misogynistic comments there with women. I'm talking about a man who, from the 80s were like this. It's the way it is, and I'm sure there's women the same. It's a different world, a world I'm not unfamiliar with. If you've read my backstory, my background, I wasn't always a monk, and I didn't sort of previous to be a monk, I wasn't sort of working for National Heritage or Oxfam or something like that. I was a businessman, and like my friend, enjoying life. And no, I don't miss any of that. Specific comforts and luxury, well, to me this is the ultimate in specific comforts and luxury. It's within the Vinaya, this kuti, the rules that support this practice, so I know I'm safe in that respect, but it's got just enough. And our teacher of this tradition, Ajahn Chah, would say that is what you need, just enough. And that applies to everything, because when you have enough, it's contentment. You don't want more, you haven't got too little, just enough. It applies to food, comfort, everything. Now, I could have probably a thicker mat, I could use a pillow rather than just folding my sangati, but I don't. I like a just grass mat, which isn't grass, it's that thin raffia stuff. That's just to stop the little termites that are eating the floor, eating me. That's it. My robe is my sleeping bag as well, and my sangati is my pillow. That for me is luxury. If I was to, I couldn't go and stay in a hotel, it's against the rules, but it wouldn't be an option anyway. I was recently asked to go and do a meditation retreat in a place whilst I was in India, and they wouldn't have me go there unless I stayed in a hotel, and it was Christmas time, so they were putting me in a very luxurious hotel. I said, well, no, I refuse to go. I mean, the retreat, the meditation retreat, was going to be held in a hospital. I said, I can just stay in one of the cupboards in the hospital, you know, one of the store. They've got many empty rooms in hospitals. Perhaps not so many in Indian hospitals, but there are always places to stay. I mean, I sleep in airports, in bus shelters, all sorts of places. No problem. But of course, you know, understandably, they're not going to invite what they consider to be a teacher to hold a meditation retreat from a well-known established monastic community in India, the biggest and most well-known in South India, and make you sleep in the cupboard. But I refused to sleep in a hotel, so the retreat was cancelled, because it's not an appropriate place for a monastic to stay. On the one occasion where I've had to, I mean, here, when I first arrived, I stayed in a guest house, but I just sleep on the floor. I have a room, it has a bed, but I sleep on the balcony, on the floor, and that's good enough for me. And it's usually empty, this guest house, and the people know me, so they know how to treat a monk. And basically, just give them some food in the morning and leave them alone. So no, thank you for the question, Blue, but I don't miss a thing. Does that answer it properly? Comfortable, quite luxurious life in the UK or not? No. Not even TV, not even sofas, all of this stuff. I see these things, you know, in house visits. Mostly in house visits in the rural parts of India, you're dealing with similar accommodation to this. People sit and live on the floor, and families all in one room. But if you're in Bangalore, in the cities, they have these very luxurious apartments. And I was going to this rich area in India, I felt quite out of place sitting on this big soft sofa. Oh, and once I was flying Emirates from, my flight was, I missed my flight. My fault, I missed the flight because I was meditating and didn't hear the call, because they called, rather than Emirates, they called Qantas, which apparently is the same deal, same airline. It was on the bit from Dubai to Bangkok. And so I'm sitting in Dubai for some hours and still thinking, that plane should have gone by now. And when I inquired, it had gone many hours ago. They said, we did call you. I said, so what now? They said, we'll get you on the next flight. And they very kindly upgraded me to business class. Oh my word, I've never had such an awkward flight. It was like a cubicle thing, all like leather cushions and bed. I don't know whether it was a bed or a chair. I think it was everything you wanted it to be. It had a bar which came out of this side, a TV which came out of this side, all of these things that a monk just does not have. You've got all of your precepts, well, not all of them, 2 of them, entertainment and drinking and stuff, popping out of you from all directions whilst you're trying to just fly from A to B. But it was okay. I mean, it was within eating time by the time I flew. So I had some peanuts and some Coca-Cola, and managed to have the seat sitting upright and ordinarily, and I could sit cross-legged in this arrangement. So it was fine. But ordinarily speaking, no, certainly don't miss that stuff, Blue. Oh, I've waffled on again, haven't I? Hope that's maybe the last question. No. Oh, this could be quite a big question, but I'm going to tackle it. Again, Blue, from you. Sorry, this is another question that came a different day. To sum up, you were discussing or arguing, you say, with an American friend practicing Buddhism about whether Buddhism will work in the West, and your friend said, so they don't want even to hear. So which way round was it? After practicing meditation, complaint and spreading Buddhism. Yes, your friend, I think, forgive me if I got it the wrong way around, but your friend thinks that there's no point trying to spread Buddhism in the West because they've got a too developed and luxurious lifestyle. They're too developed and luxurious nations. Well, you know, the Buddha himself had the most, probably at the time, luxurious existence there was possible. He was a prince, he lived in a palace, and this is as the story goes, and it was this that he renounced. He is the Buddha we're talking about. So to say that this luxury and what I've just talked about Yes, your same question, I say, Blue, it's kind of related to your former question. No, it has nothing to do with it. In fact, when you have these things, you see the futility of them. Eventually, when you see the light, when you've practiced meditation, you realize how impermanent that satisfaction is. As soon as you get that new car, that new Mercedes, that new BMW or Porsche, I should think of another country, I've only given German cars. Yeah, that tells you something, doesn't it? But as soon as you get the keys, you start suffering, because you've got to then worry about it. Is it going to get scratched? Up until you get the keys to that new car, it's, oh, I'm so excited, then you get it, and that's the point of you've got what you want. From then on it's downhill, and this goes for everything in this so-called luxurious lifestyle. And that means, and that is why, so this isn't just my view, or you can speak to your friend. Oh, at the end of the question you say, whose opinion is right? Right, neither of you are right, neither of you are wrong. But if you look at the facts, if you look at what Buddhism there is in westernized countries in terms of Theravada Buddhism, it is very pure and it is very strong. There's the English Sangha, there's whatever they call the equivalent in the USA. The numbers are not huge, but the people practicing are practicing it strictly to this tradition. The Thai Forest tradition, for instance, in England is very strong. The Forest Sangha, English Sangha Trust, and that organisation, which has been around for now decades and decades, since the 60s or 50s. In fact, Buddhism in England was around in the 30s, I think, 1930s, even before that maybe. Originally, well before that, even in the late Victorian times. So, okay, it's not become a great big religion, and it won't, perhaps, because of the nature of its atheistic nature. It doesn't have a god. Like in India, it's not big. Percentage-wise, it's the same percentage of Buddhism in India, would you believe, as there is in England. But because of the numbers of the population of sort of 1.8 billion now in India and not so many in England, the numbers are far higher. However, the purity of Buddhism in England is, how do you say purity in terms of a quantity? Anyway, it's very pure, it's very good quality, because they are people whom generally have come to the practice through meditation and through Theravada Thai Forest Buddhist Monasteries, and are in touch closely with teachers, whereas perhaps in other places there are good reasons, but other reasons why people have joined in mass numbers to Buddhism. For instance, politics, the caste system, economic problems, why people in their millions flocked to become Buddhists. That's not to say amongst those are some equally as pure Buddhist practitioners as there are in all over the world. But I don't think you can generally say about any country that isn't a Buddhist country that for one reason or another it is particularly hard to... We're not trying to spread Buddhism. If people are interested and want to practice the teachings of the Buddha, then it's there for them to do so. There is no gain in promoting it. It's up to each individual. The Buddha said himself, it's for it's for the wise to experience for themselves. If you don't want to, it doesn't matter. We don't need to be proselytizing, getting on a soapbox saying, hey, you should come and take the precepts, you should take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, it is best, join this team. Not at all. It doesn't matter at all. If you're living in a country which is very, very, say you're living in Dubai there, which is very capitalist, it's all money, all luxury and what have you. If you keep to the Vinaya, and I've not lived there, but I've spent many hours in their airports. That's as close as I've lived in Dubai, but it's an experience in Dubai airport. You can live as a monk just as easily as you can live in the streets of Delhi, New Delhi, you know, or in Kathmandu, which is a very Buddhist place. It's in here. It's not what's outside. It's not what's around you. It's Sila, Samadhi, Panya, wherever you are. And don't worry about everyone else. Only worry about yourself. Then people will see how well you're doing in your practice. Then they'll want to join you. They'll jump on board. You don't need to encourage anyone. They'll come. No problem. In the Christian church, they have this philosophy of build my house and they shall come, or something. You build a church and people will come, and it works. Yes, it used to. But in Buddhism, we build a practice and we set an example, and that's what makes people attracted to it and come to it. It's why you're listening to me, probably, because I'm a practicing Buddhist monk living in a Buddhist country, but from a Western background. And that is something slightly different than what we normally come across in our Western lives. And if you're here, it's also different, because it's a Westerner living here with you. So I'm not that common. I was less common in India, largely because of the whole COVID thing. All of the foreigners were, more or less, a lot of the foreigners were gone. We were quite a small community for a couple of years. Monastics, they were all gone. I was the only English monk for a long time. I hope there are some back there now. But I think that, well, hopefully that answers your question. And I'm not actually wanting to sound disparaging about the practice of Buddhism in any one particular country. I didn't mean to sound as if I meant it was better in England than it was in India. It's different. It adapts to suit the culture it's in. Everything about it adapts. Our robes are different colours because we take the local dye from the trees that are available to dye those robes in the forests. No other reason. So this is how evidence and differences occur. But the core principles of moral virtue, meditation, and the development of wholesome mind states and reduction of unwholesome mind states, those values are always the same, even in the different traditions that there are, and the many variants on those different traditions that there are. The core values, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, which is that Sila, Samadhi, Panya, good behaviour, meditation and wisdom, is always the same. So, on that note, after my Thai talking time, I hope I've answered all of your questions. I did have some other things to talk about, but I think it's certainly time to leave it there, and wish you all the very best with your practice if you're meditating. If you're not meditating, don't worry. Now's as good a time to start as any. Try not to always leave it until tomorrow, because there's always time. If you've got time to breathe, you have time to meditate. Each breath, just watch it coming in and going out. If you can do that once in your day, you are meditating. So welcome to the club. Namo Buddhaya.